So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another webinar from Sight and Sound Technology. Hope everybody is remaining to stay safe and well during these strange times. My name is Stuart Lawler, and my colleague Sam Coulson is here again. We're back for another session. And today, really interestingly, because we're showing a device that's actually been around for a very long time. And it's a device that hasn't changed a whole lot, although they have made some modifications, I suppose, to some of the peripherals that allow it to connect with newer technology. But in essence, it does the same thing as it did 25 years ago. It stood the test of time and people still love it. And that's, of course, is the Mountbatten Brailler. So Sam is going to talk us through that today, talk to you about how it can be useful in an education setting and some of the features that it has available. Next week, at this time, 2 p.m. on Thursday, we'll be talking to you about the Transformer and Onyx HD, which are low vision magnification, which can be particularly useful in classroom for distance magnification. So that's next Thursday. But now we're going to talk about the Mountbatten. Just to say, if you would like to ask questions during the session, you can type in the chat window and we'll be keeping an eye on those, and we'll break during the session as we go along for your questions. And you can also raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button if you want to speak, and we will get to you during the session. So I'm going to hand over to Sam, who will talk to us today about Mountbatten.
Great. Thank you, Stuart. Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another session. It's good to be here. Yeah, thank you to Stuart for the introduction. Today's all about the Mountbatten, the Brailler Whisperer. Now, the Mountbatten does come in a variety of formats in terms of its capability, but the Mountbatten Brailler is the base unit, and then there are different additions or levels of sort of advancement, if you like. But we're going to be looking at the all singing, all dancing version, which is the learning system. So that can do everything. But yeah, as I say, it does come in sort of less sophisticated versions. Good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just change my camera over so you can actually see the Mountbatten itself. Okay, there it is. Great. So yeah, this is the Mountbatten. So essentially, the Mountbatten is an electronic Braille typewriter or learning device for teachers and for children from as young as very early childhood right up into university. The Mountbatten, it offers connectivity, which we're going to look at, a variety of resources and software to support flexible teaching and educational needs. Now, the Mountbatten's audio response, this reinforces learning and it facilitates autonomous learning. Now, as you can see from the interface there, the Mountbatten has a very high contrast, very ergonomic light touch keyboard, which makes it even more accessible for very young children, very pre-Braille. Now, the interaction that the Mountbatten allows with mainstream devices such as iOS and Android, the application, this brings children with visual impairments even closer to their peers at school and their families. And we're going to actually look at the iOS and Android app that you compare to the Mountbatten in more detail later in the presentation. Now, the Mountbatten Whisperer was given its name due to the fact that its actual embossing sound level is very much softer, let's say, than most other embossers, as you all know.
Sam, may I just interrupt you for a moment? We just had a query if we could, and I know we've been trying to struggle with this, the mic volume
Right.
is very low for some people. So
Okay. No
I'm not sure if we can.
Let me just.
We have been trying this before we started the session as well.
Okay, I'll try and get the mic a little bit closer to me. Can we have some feedback?
Andy, if you can just let us know if that's any better for you.
Is that any better? If not, I'll change mic. Slightly?
Slightly, okay.
Okay, I'll tell you what, Stuart, let's just go with what we did.
Go with our tried and trusted, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's try that version. Is that?
Oh, that's brilliant. You're sounding great.
Okay, fine.
Much better. There we go.
You spend all this money on an expensive microphone from Amazon, and it's useless. Anyway, so we'll stay with the computer audio, computer microphone for now. Thank you, Andy, for that. And please do, anyone else, if you've got any visual or sound issues, please do flag them. Great. Yeah. So I was just discussing the Whisperer. It's gained its Whisperer title from the fact that the embossing level, the sound level, is fairly muted in comparison to other embossers, and you can also adjust the level of the quality of the embossing hammer. You can increase or decrease how hard or how soft that hits the paper. So hence the name, the Whisperer there. So also some of its other features, which we're going to look at as well. So a long-lasting battery, which allows for even more flexibility in general education in the classroom, or anywhere that you want your student or your child to interact with Braille at school or at home. As I said, you can connect wirelessly through the app on the phone there, and this is a way of really allowing the student to communicate with the teacher, to communicate with the student very quickly, very effectively, but also other sighted students. It offers them a way to communicate with a deaf and blind or blind student very quickly, and yeah, we're going to look at some of those features later on. Some other areas we're going to cover: you can also save files to the Mountbatten as well as export them to a computer or to a handheld device, a phone or a tablet. There's two modes in which you can operate the Mountbatten. There's the Learn mode and Advanced mode, and a bit of an overview of those two different modes. Learn mode is very much for beginners, as you can imagine, those that are completely new to Braille. This allows you to do things like very basic, uncontracted typewriting, and setting margins, that sort of thing, but very much for the beginners. And in the advanced mode, this allows you to do much more and adds sort of a number of complex activities and features. You can start formatting the text around the page. You can also input various Braille commands and other learning tools, which opens a number of features. And you can easily switch between these two modes if you have students at varying levels of ability. You can easily switch between Learn and Advanced by inputting a command into the Mountbatten. And there's 15 different self-taught learning modules in the Mountbatten, which is called the Pattern series. You may or may not be aware of the Pattern series. This was developed in order to basically add the different groups of contractions as the student obviously becomes more familiar with the contractions and more confident. And you can add each group of contractions one by one as the student becomes more advanced in their Braille learning. You can also pair it to, as I said, to a computer, tablet or phone via Bluetooth or via USB, and we're going to look at that in a little bit. Good. Now, before we get stuck into looking at the interface and the ports and some of the interface there, just a brief history of Mountbatten. Now, I thought I'd put this in just because I found it quite interesting. So, the reason where the Mountbatten name comes from, many of you will know, or you might not, but Lord Mountbatten, he was the great-grandson of Queen Victoria, and he was born in Windsor, in England. Now, he was killed just off the coast of Ireland. He was actually assassinated by the IRA in about 79, I think it was. And after his death, a trust fund was established in his name, and a portion of that money went into developing a new Braille writer, hence the Mountbatten. Now, the Mountbatten was originally developed by and manufactured by an Australian company called Quantum Technology. And you'll notice in a second when we turn it on, there's a friendly good eye, which the Aussies obviously wanted to keep. But in recent years, Harpo, who are a Polish technology company, they've taken over the production and the support of the Mountbatten. And they were the ones that actually added the Bluetooth connectivity, which allows us to pair the Mountbatten to a mobile device. And it's, as I said earlier, it's a great way to see instant Braille to print translation and vice versa. So yeah, as Stuart mentioned, it's been around for donkey's years, the Mountbatten, but the Polish company Harpo have added a few new features to sort of bring it up to the modern demand, if you like. Great. So enough of the history lesson. Let's now start talking about the important stuff. So this is the interface on the front of the Mountbatten here. Okay, now a few key specs that you may want to know. The weight of the Mountbatten, it's around 4.7 kilos, 10.3 pounds. So there, it's quite a weighty device. It does come with a built-in handle just here that the student can easily pick up like a briefcase almost. And the case that it actually comes with is a really neat little case. It can be used as a backpack, so the student can easily transport the Mountbatten between lessons or from school to home if they need to. We talked about the battery briefly already, so it's got a rechargeable internal battery that you'll get 20 hours standard use out of. Paper we're going to look at as well. I know this is always quite an important discussion with embossers. One of the great things about the Mountbatten is it will accept just regular office printer paper. Quantum and Harpo were aware that sometimes Braille paper can, sometimes be difficult to get hold of. It's expensive, so it will just take standard office paper, as well as it will accept, other more dense, more thicker qualities of Braille paper up to 140 GSM. So it's quite varied in what it can take with the paper there. Languages we're going to look at as well. So there's a whole range of available languages that the Mountbatten will offer, European and beyond, and Braille codes as well. You can simply change the Braille code by inputting a command, which we'll look at as well. Good. So those are a few specs to start with, and now we can get on to actually looking at the interface itself. So those of you that can see this, you'll see the yellow panel on the front of the Mountbatten there, and we've got 6 black keys, and we've got 2, 4, 6, 7 blue keys. My maths is terrible. Now, in short, the black keys are obviously the 6-dot Braille cell. These are for inputting the Braille dots, and then the blue keys are function keys. Okay, so these allow us to do a number of things as you would on a keyboard or a typewriter. Also, at the top of the Mountbatten here, you may or may not be able to see it from this angle, but we've got the embossing head, the hammer there, which obviously embosses the Braille. We've got the paper advance wheel on the left-hand side, which allows you to bring the paper through the machine. On this side is the paper lever. This is important for when you want to paper lever up. Okay. Insert or take the paper out there. This at the back here is called the reading table. So the idea there is that that's where the student will put their fingers to read the Braille that they've created. This black sort of section here, this is called the right paper margin adjuster, and this is movable. So this allows the student to, depending on what size or width of paper that they're using. But it's a really important little component because without that being in place, then the Mountbatten, you won't be able to figure out how many lines are going to be, or how many cells, sorry, are going to be on that particular line. So that's an important thing to mention. And yeah, and then we can go down and look at the 6-dot Perkins keyboard. As you can see there, you've got dots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, in the centre there, this is the command button, which is a really important key, and we're going to look at that more as we go along. On the bottom here, we've got the space bar and the new line key. Okay, which are pretty self-explanatory. These two here, we've got, they sort of double up in a sense, but essentially this one is enter, this one is backspace. And above those, we've got left function and right function. These two keys, as with many Braille displays and note takers, can be programmed to do various things. But they're, by default, their function is back tab, tab and back tab, essentially, by default. Okay, so it's, you know, in theory, a very basic, very simple and quite minimal looking interface there, which obviously will become more complex as we go through the session. Good. Now let's just have a quick look at some of the ports with Mountbatten. Unplug the charger. So on the side of the Mountbatten here, we've got 2 ports. Okay. Now this one on my right is the Mimic port. Now this one, there's a couple of ports on the Mountbatten that are actually now obsolete. As we were saying, it's quite an old unit, but the Mountbatten used to be able to connect to a little mini display so the teacher could see what they were inputting if they were using a QWERTY keyboard, for instance. We don't need that anymore because we have the app. Okay, but so this one's almost obsolete. This one is to connect to a computer. Okay, which you may or may not need. On the back of the unit, we've got even more obsolete connectors. These are to connect to an old style printer, which we no longer produce. And this one at the end here is for an old PS2 keyboard, QWERTY keyboard, which they still do exist. They're just a little bit more difficult to get hold of. So that is obviously if the teacher wants to do the old-fashioned way and communicate by plugging a keyboard in and communicating via QWERTY keyboard. You've got a headphone jack there, and you've got the power port at the side, and we've got the speaker where the audio comes out of just there. Okay, so that's the ports from around the Mountbatten. Okay, and we'll just pop that back on the desk there, and and we can get started with looking at the features. Good. Now to start with, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move the right margin lever to the side, and there's a metal bar across the top of the Mountbatten here. Okay, this is called the paper bail. Okay, so this is allows the blind student, obviously, when they're feeding the paper through, it keeps it obviously flat, keeps it in line. However, for younger students or for novices, beginners, this may get in the way when trying to read the Braille that they've created. So you can easily remove this. It just sort of slots out of the Mountbatten like that. Okay, and this frees up this area for the student to be able to read in much more, with much more ease. Okay. However, do make sure that you pop the right margin lever back, because as I said earlier, otherwise the Braille lever will just carry on off the edge of the paper. Okay. So there we go. Okay. We're ready to go. Perfect. Good. So once you start with the Mountbatten out of the box, it's default settings. Okay. So the following, these are just suggestions to adjust the settings on the Mountbatten to support a beginning Braille users, to optimize the learning for them. Now, the first thing is to be sure that the device is set to learn mode, which it is by default. It should, when you turn it on, it should already be in learn mode. Okay. Also, the line spacing, you can adjust or customize the line spacing. Now, I would suggest double spacing is preferred for the early days of learning Braille. Single spacing, obviously, maybe a little bit more clustered. Word wrapping, which we all may be familiar of, You can turn this feature off so that words at the end of the line, they're not hyphenated and wrapped to a new line, so you can turn that off as well. As I mentioned earlier about the Braille head, you can increase or decrease the dot pressure of the hammer. So you can reduce the embossing pressure and use, regular photocopy paper for classroom situations to reduce the noise level. There's also a few other suggestions, like you could pop it on 2 mouse mats. There's, so non-technological methods to quieten the Mountbatten, and even further, you could pop it on 2 mouse mats, that sort of thing. Good. Yeah, so as I said, it'll be in learn mode by default. And learn mode is designed to help students first learn the Braille keyboard and learn the basics of the alphabet. So by default, the speech in learn mode, this will be recorded. So as the student brailles each letter, when I turn it on, there we go. It's going to talk to us now.
G'day, not charging, advanced mode.
Okay, so it's in advanced mode because I've obviously been playing around with it.
Command
So I'm just...
A, D, V, off.
Okay, so we're now in learn mode, okay?
A,
Okay, so I just brailled the letter A there, and you'll have listened to the audio feedback. So each letter that I braille,
B, C, D.
okay, we'll get the audio feedback there, and yeah, each Braille letter will be read back in learn mode. Now, as you get more advanced into more advanced Braille and you start using contractions, this is only in advanced mode. Okay, now with advanced mode, recorded speech, as it is in learn mode, recorded speech, it obviously can't recognise all of the contractions, which is why we have advanced mode, because advanced mode uses a synthesised speech in order for all of the commands to be read out loud for the student. Obviously, some of the more complex contractions it wouldn't be able to be picked up through recorded speech. Now, some of the additional features in advanced mode. Okay, so we have obviously we have Braille translation, text to Braille, Braille to text. You can connect a PC keyboard if needed. We talked about synthesized speech, and you can also increase the pitch, decrease speed of voice, that sort of thing. Yeah, and also in advanced mode, yeah, you can communicate with the app, as I said. And you can easily, as I did mention, you can easily switch between the two modes by inputting the command ADV, advanced. So you press the command key, and then input ADV.
On.
Okay, so on. So we're now in advanced mode, and that's a toggle. So you can toggle in and out of advanced mode into learn mode as you wish. Okay. Now, paper I've already briefly touched on. So we mentioned the regular photocopy paper as well as other thicker, heavier paper. You will need to adjust the impact settings, as I mentioned, depending on what paper you're using, just to be sure that it will emboss correctly. Yeah, and just to emphasise, when loading the paper, it's really important to show that this right paper guide is correctly positioned, just so the Mountbatten can detect exactly how many characters can fit on each line. Good. Okay, so now let's have a look at some brailing basics, okay, and then we can have a quick pit stop if there's any questions. Okay, so brailing basics. Now, one of the unique features of the Mountbatten is its ability to actually correct Braille. Okay, so in order to correct a letter, for instance, I need to input a command into the Mountbatten, which is backspace, okay, plus the new letter. Okay, so if I just drop down a line, okay, if I type and okay, so I type ABD there, so I missed the C, so I want to correct that. So I hit backspace, okay, with the letter that I want, which would be C. Okay, now what that's actually done is, and I was a bit sceptical about this at first. I thought, oh well, if it's pushing down the dots that were incorrect, surely it would leave some sort of trace of the incorrect letter. But it really doesn't. I mean, it'd be really difficult to show you that. I mean, I can attempt to show you that by moving my camera. Now, it may not be in focus on that, but just by the Braille hammer there is the letter C. Whereas before there was the dots 1, 4, and 5 for D. So it's very precisely pushed down the Braille dots, and it's Braille the new letter very quickly. I've just pressed backspace the new letter that I want to input, and it's done that very quickly. You can erase a letter completely, and it will flatten all of the dots, and you can hit backspace and space together.
Correction space.
And it will just push down the dots completely. So it will get rid of the, and then again, it's very, again, I was skeptical, but it really does push the dots down so that there is really no tactile dots there whatsoever. Good, and also if a student wanted to correct a character that earlier in the sentence, so they've brailled something, they then read it back and thought, oh, I've misspelt that, then they can, they can easily use backspace until they find the letter that they need, and then the same function. Okay, backspace, new letter, it would correct it straight away. Okay, so these are really handy little tools for sort of basic Braille writing. Now, just sort of moving on from that slightly, we've the Mountbatten now, it has a number of keystrokes to allow you to easily navigate around the page. So, for instance, if I just go to new line and space together, for instance, okay, that would be that's called the line feed command. Okay, so that would then drop me down to the next line. New line and backspace. Okay, that would then move me back up the page to where I needed to be, and the Braille head will remain in the position that it was left. Okay, exactly the same. So these are both, quite useful for a student who's carrying out a maths exercise on the Mountbatten, for instance. They could easily move up and down with the Braille hammer remaining in the same position very quickly. Okay. And another quick keystroke, new line and enter, which I won't do, but new line and enter, for instance, that will remove the paper from the Mountbatten completely. So that'll be new line and enter, the paper will be ejected from the Mountbatten. Okay. Yeah, and then as I mentioned earlier, we've got left tab and right tab.
Back tab, left margin, read, tab.
So each time I press the tab button there, the Braille hammer will move 5 spaces across the page, so it'll indent across the page as necessary. So again, you can very quickly navigate around the page using the Mountbatten. Now, I don't know if that's an appropriate time to stop for any questions, Stuart, or I can just keep moving.
Well, there's nothing on chat at the moment, Sam. So you can happily work away. Just to remind people, if you wish, you can type in the chat area if you have a question or comment that you'd like to relay. And if you want to speak, you can raise your hand and we'll get to you and unmute you so that you can ask a question if you wish.
Thank you, Stuart. Great.
And just from a comment from Andy, who says, I love how well the backspace works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it is actually, it's really good.
It is, yeah. And as I said, it's very ergonomic, the keyboard there. It's really light of touch. You don't need to press hard on the keys at all. So, even for young children, it works really well. Good. So we've looked at a few brailling basics. Now we're going to move on to issuing commands into the Mountbatten, as I mentioned earlier. This is done in advanced mode in order to access certain features or options. So there's 2 types of commands that we can input into the Mountbatten. There's regular commands, okay, and there's chorded commands, okay, which many of you will be familiar with working with note takers and Braille displays. So an important thing to note is that the Mountbatten commands, they all start with the command key and they all end with the enter key. Okay, that's really useful to know. Now there's a number of commands that can be used to change the various settings. And as I said, the formula for each command would be the command, the specific letter of the command, plus enter. For example, I can set the command forward embossing, okay, which would be command F E. Okay, that's turned on forward embossing now. So what that means is anything that I now braille, the braille head won't emboss anything until I hit new line. Okay, so if I just put okay. Hang on a second. Ah, there we go. Do you believe it's not playing nicely? Okay, so it took its time there, but eventually we got there in the end. Okay, so that would be forward embossing, for instance. So that's just an example of inputting a command, FE, forward embossing, enter, and off we go. So a few other commands that we can look at briefly. Chorded commands, for instance. Now we've got something, the carriage return, for instance. So if I input the C chord, which would be dots 1, dots 4, and the spacebar. Okay, again, that would act as a return, a carriage return, so that drop down a line. The I chord would tab, just like the function keys. If you had these function keys programmed to do something else, you could use the I chord as an alternative, that sort of thing. Now, another example of a common command would be the center command. So if a student was starting a new page of Braille text, and they wanted to put a title at the top of their page, for instance, okay, I want the Braille head to start in the center of the page. Okay, so I need to input the command SE for center. So command. Okay, so that's told me that it's on now. Okay, so anything that I now braille, it should emboss in the center of the page. Okay, good. Now, I'm just going to move my camera again so I can assure you that that has now embossed it in the center of my page. It's embossed it very neatly. I don't know if you can see the quality of the Braille there. And then the Braille head has then moved back to the left-hand side of the page. Okay, so a really useful little command. Command SE will input. I will then need to turn that off. You know, if I then want to start writing from the left-hand side of the page. Okay, so it's telling me that it's off. So now. Okay, so now it's just brailing across the line from the left-hand side of the page to the right, as it would normally. Okay, so yeah, so the CE, sorry, is a really common command that might be used. Good. Another quick command would be write a line, for instance. So RA. Okay, so command. Okay, so again, that will then take the hammer over to the right-hand side of the page. Okay, I don't know if you saw that. The hammer just went over to the right-hand side of the page, input the characters, and then came back to the left-hand side of the page. So these are just, some quick and quite, commonly used commands that the student can use to format the text on the page. Good. Now let's have a quick look at selecting Braille codes. Okay, so the Mountbatten supports several Braille codes. Now, the majority of us will just be using UEB, for instance, but it will support American Braille, EBAE, music Braille, for instance. Obviously, as well as contracted and uncontracted grade 1, grade 2. You can set the device to UEB quite simply by entering the command DFLN space and then Oz. Obviously, Quantum is an Australian company, and they originally set UEB to using the command OZ and enter for Oz. Okay. American Braille, for instance, it would be DFLN space USA. And all of these, obviously, Braille codes and the commands can be found in the user guide very, very simply. But yeah, there is a number of Braille codes and different languages as well that can be adjusted to suit those varying Braille codes as well. Good. Now, another useful little tool for Braille beginners, younger students, or maybe older students, but I think this is a really useful little tool. Is called graphics mode. Okay. Now, this allows the younger students, especially, to play, to familiarise themselves with the keyboard, as well as creating a tactile image on the page, essentially. So, graphics mode, it simply just removes the spaces between the cells and allows you to use the Mountbatten for drawing. So in order to do this, we need to input the command GF and enter for graphics mode. So enter G and F. Okay, so what that's now done is it's just removed the spaces between the cells. So now if I start inputting some Braille dots, so G is always a good one because there's plenty of dots, isn't there, all together. And then if I hit new line. Okay, now interestingly enough, because I didn't take right align off, it's actually gone right over to the right hand side of the page there. It's input it, and then the Braille hammers come back. So I'm going to turn right align off, and I'm going to put centering back on. Okay, and on. I'm going to do that again. And I'm going to do exactly the same again. I'm going to do. And again. Okay, so now if I just move my camera again, okay, you'll see in the centre of the page there, okay, we've created a sort of a little tactile image, which obviously I've done very quickly. But if a student wanted to be more creative, more precise, obviously they could navigate around the page in different ways in order to make that image look a little bit more attractive. But this just gives you an idea of how you can use the Braille commands, use the tabbing, for instance, to add to that image, that little tactile drawing. But graphics mode, I think, is really, really great for engaging the younger students with tactile drawings and tactile images, but at the same time, because it's reading the letters through with the audio output, it's also keeping the student engaged with the keystrokes, and it's reinforcing the Braille lettering because of the feedback, the audio feedback that you're getting. So it's a useful little tool, is graphics mode. So I'm going to turn that off now. And off. Good. Great. So now we're going to look at saving files to the Mountbatten. Okay. So the Mountbatten has an internal memory capacity which can store documents as you're brailing them. So we're going to look at some simple brailing which will then save, and it will allow you to add information or print them at a later date. So firstly, we need to create a new document and issue the command begin. Okay, so I'm going to enter the command begin. Now, this is where my Braille alphabet goes slightly to pot.
You want any Braille codes, Sam?
Thank you. It's the I. I don't know why. I always forget the I. So there we go. So we're going to go command to begin with. Then we're going to go B, E, G, and there we go. I and N. Okay. Plus space. And then I need to create a file name for my new file. So let's just say Sam, for instance. Let's just do that. So and M, which would be M. Great. And then enter. Okay, so that's created a new file called Sam. Okay, so now anything I braille after this point will be saved under this file until either I issue the command end or I turn the Mountbatten off. Okay, if I just simply turned it off, it would save the file and we could access that later. So I'm just going to input briefly a quick sentence. My brailing is obviously not very quick at all. H L L O, and we're going to go with and W, great. Okay, perfect. And then if I...
Sam, just a really quick question while you're doing that.
Yeah.
Andy asks, or Andy says, I assume it just comes with that one voice. Is there isn't a standard, there is no other voices for the Mountbatten, is there?
No, so the synthesized and the recorded speech do differ. I must admit that the recorded speech, as you can imagine, is much nicer to listen to. But yeah, it obviously you can change accents, you can change languages, but no, there's limited choice.
Yeah, it's the old mimic speech synthesizer. Actually, that's what that is, and that was around in the BBC micro machines in the 80s. So it gives you a sense of how old this, when they were starting to use this technology.
Yeah, it's pretty old school stuff, but I think it's just stood the test of time. I mean, as you all know, Stuart, it's I know it's not the most popular machine over in Ireland, but it certainly has stood the test of time for
absolutely
for many reasons. Good. Okay, so I've just created a file called SAM, and then I need to just input the command end or turn the Mountbatten off. So I'll just input the command end.
Command
E and N and D.
Okay.
Okay, good. And also, again, I forgot to turn off centering. So it's written my sentence, hello, how are you, in the center of the page. But then that's ended the document. Okay, so we've come out of that document now. So if the student wanted to find this saved document in order to add to it, so I'd need to issue the command append. Okay, so in order to do that, I'll leave my Braille alphabet again. So we'll just hit the command button.
Command
We'll then hit A, P, P, E, N and D space plus the file name, which was SAM,
yes. Okay.
and M, which is
Yeah.
M, and then enter.
Please wait. Okay. Event.
Okay, please wait. Okay, great. So what will happen now is it's taken me back into my file, okay, and it will begin. I will be able to Braille exactly where I'd finished at the end of the file that I just saved. Okay, so I could then carry on in that file as I'd finished. So really useful for the student just to access a file very quickly, much quicker than I can, and carry on where they left off. Good. So another key. I know I've got a question that's just come in there, Stuart, which I'll answer in 1 second. I'll just finish this segment. So as well as creating a file and amending it, you can also very quickly emboss a document. If I want to find a specific file and emboss it, and emboss the entire document, I need to enter the command print. Okay, so that will be command PR plus the file name and enter. Okay, which I'll do as quickly as I can right now. So we'll go command PR space file name, which was
Yes. Okay.
and M and enter.
Command error.
Ah, it's saying command error. That's probably because I'm in the file already, so I'm just going to turn it off and turn it back on.
Sam, do you want to just answer the question about memory while we're putting it up? So how much memory, how much can it hold in terms of storage?
Good. So, memory size in terms of Braille pages, I've got here for specification. I've got the memory size of the learning system, which is the top end one, is 600 Braille pages, and then memory size in terms of kilobytes is 400. Is what I have here in terms of the specs I've got in front of me.
I suppose in terms of Braille files, which essentially is just very much kind of text only, that's actually quite a relatively big capacity.
Yeah, these are the specs that are actually on our website, Caroline. So we've got memory size and memory in terms of its kilobytes and Braille pages. It outlines the 4 different specs of the Mountbatten on our website, which is useful. Good. So I know pressed for time, so I'll just push on. So I won't go back and re-demonstrate that. But what I was explaining is, if I want to quickly emboss a file that I've previously been working on, I need to input the command PR plus a space, file name, and enter, and it will emboss that file straight away for me. Okay. And another key element for this section is that if I need to find out what files I've saved onto my Mountbatten, if I can't remember, for instance, obviously there's no there's no display for the teacher or anything like that on the Mountbatten. But if the student wants to do that, they can input the command dir for directory, and then it will actually emboss a list of file names that are stored on the Mountbatten. Okay, so really useful little shortcut there to find out what's saved on the unit. Good. Now we've got 10 minutes to go, pretty much, and I want to have a look at the Android app, okay, or the iOS app, okay, which is a really useful tool for obviously for you teachers to interact with the students. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up the app on my phone. I'm going to connect to my Mountbatten, and it will bring up a list of available Mountbattens there on my phone, which the Mountbatten will start beeping. And eventually it will connect. It doesn't take long at all, actually, just a few seconds. And while it's doing that, so as I said earlier, essentially it's a wireless app that you can enjoy all the benefits of the quiet but potent Mountbatten. And it really does come in handy when embossing a document or homework or a letter. And obviously it's an additional use tool for communication with the student and the teacher, or here we go, or other sighted students. So I did mention earlier as well, the Mountbatten is compatible with an old style PS2 keyboard, but they're very they're almost obsolete now, PS2 keyboards. It's all USB now, isn't it? So the app is a perfect way to do this. Okay, so now there's two main features really on the app. Okay, now I hope you can see my screen here. I do apologise if not. What I might do is, okay, so the first one at the top there, it's called Whiteboard. Okay, so if I just go into Whiteboard, okay, so this allows a student or teacher to type text into the phone, and then the text will be embossed for the blind student to read. Okay, so I'll just do that now very quickly. So, hello. Okay, so you've already heard the Mountbatten, and it was also speaking the letters out loud as well. I've written there, if you can see that on my phone, hello, how are you? Okay, now this is in contracted Braille in grade 2, so we can change it to uncontracted if we need to via the app. You can have the option there to change that. You can clear the screen as well, very simply. And if I press return on my phone, the Braille hammer on the Mountbatten will drop down to the next line, and I will be able to carry on typing. It's just a great way to... It's actually a really nice way of encouraging the student as well, letting them know that they're doing a really good job in the activity, that sort of thing. It's a really quick and easy way of communicating with the student. So that's Whiteboard. Okay, so I'm going to come out of Whiteboard now. I'm going to go into Chat. Okay, now this is a really nice feature. Okay. Okay. So this chat feature, this allows the blind user and the teacher to communicate via a text message-like format. So the teacher inputs the text into the text field in the app. Okay, now I don't know if you can see this, but it's very much like a text message format on my phone. Okay, the text is then sent to the Mountbatten, and then the student can respond by inputting Braille and pressing New Line on the Mountbatten, and the text will appear on my phone. Okay, so I'm gonna start this off with hello, how are you? Okay, so I've done the same again. I've gone with hello, how are you? Okay, and then the student will want to respond to that. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to type letters. I'm not going to attempt to write words here. Great. Okay, so as you can see there on my phone, okay, we've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's about as advanced as my Braille writing goes. I'm embarrassed to say, but as you can see there, we very quickly communicated the student and the teacher. Okay, so it's appeared on the screen, and the response there has appeared underneath it. Okay, and again, you can change this from grades 1 to grades 2. You can add the contractions as you see fit. Okay, so that essentially is the most, those are I'd say the most important features with the Mountbatten, with the app. Sorry. A couple of other quick things to show you. You can also access the files that are stored on the Mountbatten via the app. Okay, so the teacher can see what's saved on here. Okay, so you can go into this section here. It tells me which files. You see that file. I don't know if you can see that. It says Sam. That's the file that I saved just a second ago. Okay, and there's one above that called Diary. Okay, so I can actually download this file that I'd saved on the Mountbatten. I can download and access it on my handheld device, tablet or phone. So it's going to ask me now if I want to translate this to print, and yes, I do. Great, and then it's showing me the text that I'd actually saved on the Mountbatten earlier. Hello, how are you? Okay, so it's a really quick and easy way of the teacher accessing the student's work as well. Okay, so it's going to save you a lot of time as well. And then I can do things like save. I can delete files from the app. I'll go with save for now. Okay, so in a nutshell, that is the Mountbatten Mimic app and how it works by pairing to the Mountbatten. I could spend a whole session probably on that, but I know we're pushed for time. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left. So for the last sort of section, I'll quickly talk about the pattern series, which I mentioned at the beginning. Okay, this is the 15 pattern groups that is available on the Mountbatten in order for the student to start learning more advanced contractions and more complex words and phrases. So what Mountbatten have done is, as the student transitions from grade 1 to 2, the Mountbatten provides a structured way of doing this by using the pattern series. And the pattern series, this ensures that anything produced on the keyboard, this will use the contractions that a student is familiar with and not the contractions they are not familiar with. As I said, the pattern series are grouped from groups 1 to 15. Okay, now the first group is alphabet and letter words. So if I was to turn on the first pattern group, for instance, which is, as I said, alphabet and letter words, so that would be B for but, C for can, so on. I'd need to input this command. So I'd hit command, and then I'd need to input patterns. So P-A-T-T, E-R, and N, I always forget, and S. So that's command patterns space, then the number sign, so dots 3, 4, 5, and 6. Dots 3, 4, 5, 6. And then number 1, so dot A. Patterns 1 on. Okay, good. So it just said patterns 1 on. Okay, so I've just turned on the patterns group, alphabet and letter words. Okay, so yeah, so now that's not, and as I mentioned at the beginning, you can add each group of patterns and contractions one after another until you've introduced all of the contractions for grade 2 Braille. So once you have all the patterns turned on, all 15, you don't need to use the pattern series anymore. You can just continue to use grade 2 translation as a. So some of the other groups that I won't go on to now because obviously we're just short of time, but the next group, for instance, is upper cell contractions. Okay, so whole or part words, simulated letter words, part word signs, and then it gets even more advanced, things like multi-cell contractions, dot 5, whole and part words, that sort of thing. So you can add each group, which is numbered, and the teacher will be able to find all of this information in the user guide, and it will also tell you how to issue the commands to turn these pattern series on and off. So yeah, so that's when you start really looking at the more advanced stuff for the older students. And then very quickly, I won't demonstrate this because we don't have time, but there's some other really useful features of the Mountbatten. So music braille, which I would have loved to demonstrate, and maybe we can do that in another session. I'm a big music lover, so I'm quite passionate about braille and music, and I think it's a fantastic learning resource to get students really engaged with music at an early age. So you can't access the Mountbatten music braille by issuing a command. And then there's 3 different tasks or activities that you can use. Simply just playing a tune, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Do Re Mi, that sort of thing, solfege scales. But then you can make it more complex by composing your own tune by inputting a series of keys. And the Mountbatten is, fairly sophisticated in that sense. There's keys for lengthening notes and crotchets, minims, all of the musical notation. There's ways of inputting that using the keyboard and the function keys. So yeah, I just thought I'd end on that, just to sort of give you a taster of music braille. And if there's demand for it, then perhaps we could do another session focusing on music braille. But in essence, I think I've got 1 minute left of my time. That is the Mountbatten Braille Whisperer. And yeah, I'll open for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Sam. We've got a thank you message from Andy. Thanks, Andy. Like you, I'm very interested in music and Braille music, having used Braille music extensively. So I think we should definitely devote a session to Braille music and the Mountbatten. I think it's a great idea. Just quick bit of time for any other questions, either on chat, or if you'd like to speak or you want to say something, or if you're more comfortable asking a question, please raise your hand now and we will see that and we will get you on air. If not, then thank you, Alison, as well. If not, we'll say good luck and thank you, everybody. Stay safe, stay well. Sam will be back next week with the Transformer HD and the Onyx HD, and Angus will be back with him next week. I'm doing another event for Global Accessibility Awareness Day, which is next Thursday, by the way. And then 2 weeks' time, we're back to talk about more Braille devices. So until then, thanks a million, and thank you very much, Sam, for a great presentation.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Stuart.